The grimy bar had a single, crackling multi-television. Otherwise, it was a completely unremarkable dive bar filled with miners of a half-dozen species. The multi-television, however, was very peculiar, particularly in a place where one could get drunk on less than 5 corporate credit vouchers. If one said that 10 such apparents existed on this frontier planet, one would be exaggerating by handsworth. So it was almost unbelievable to find a multi-television in a place as uncultured as this. The greasy streets of Cappen's District 5, however, had a rich and deep history filled with stabbings, robbery, illegal organ growth, and of course, contraband. The bar, Leo's, was owned by the Zwindlichpat of the same name. He got the nickname while working on the smuggler's gang of humans as an enforcer of types, when they noted the resemblance between his species' features and an animal of their home planet. When Leo lost an arm during a tough job, he had to quit the business. With no family on the planet, half of his crew gone or hiding, and one fewer appendix, he renovated. As much as one could call the soot in the walls, the old ash on the floor, and the general sliminess of the place renovated, his late uncle's house to sell cheap liquor and cheaper entertainment. Seeing very little success and up to his neck in debt, Leo was ready to sell the place for meager scraps, drink them all away, and see if the fighting pits could at least award him a quick end to his misery. It was then that without warning a multi-television appeared on a table while he was opening the bar one day. No note was left, no word spoken, and he never even heard of his human partners again, but he knew who had given it to him. A multi-television connected through a synthetic dimension to a central communication center. Like a mycelium, it grew from a central stem, and each set could connect with the ramifications and between each other, through thousands of light years past the speed of light. On a bigger planet, one could see many of them, though very few were owned by a single person, except those as rich as emperors. This set was of dubious origin, and with the serial scraped long ago, it could not be sold. So it stood at the bar, and it brought a meager following, then a bigger one, and then it was a mainstay of the local culture. The local law enforcement didn't dare touch the thing for fear of a riot, even when they knew for certain it was stolen. Truthfully, they also liked to sit at the bar and watch the games, and if they took the thing, it would end up sitting at a politician's or judge's house before too long. This at least served a purpose to the community, they decided. When asked why Leo didn't use his earnings to uplift the place, or at least clean it more thoroughly, he always pointed to his lost arm and said, "Sometimes it is better to not attract too much attention," before flashing a leonine grin. Tonight, the screen flashed across a million miles. The cacophony of different games played with different cars by different species, rousing the players of each corner of the bar, but everybody lifted their eyes every few moments to look at the other game, the one on the screen. And the humans were losing. Very badly. It was tough luck, really. While not considered favourites to win the whole thing, the humans had been getting rather good as of lately, and if they had been put in a more favourable group, they would probably make at least a deep run. But they were put in a group with 3 of the toughest races, the Rakri, Masters of Strategy, the Yomians, who spent trillions of credits in preparing their team, and the ones beating the hell out of them right now, the Astorians, defending the title. "What is that on the human's chest?" asked a Lucium youth, sitting right beneath the screen. Barely old enough to work, her chitinous membranes not yet hardened. She held a cheap shot of liquor that she sampled slowly and with great distaste, more an entrance fee than a portable drink. An older gentleman of the same race laughed with chagrin. "That is the mark of an imbecile race." The youth looked at the older one, puzzled. "They lost their home planet a couple thousand cycles ago. Not lost in the sense that it was destroyed in a war or taken by another species or anything like that." The older man took an oily shot and licked his mandibles. "They lost their planet in that they can't find it. Lost. Now each of them, or at least most of them I should say, tattoo themselves to the night sky from the vantage point of where they were born. A means to show where they are from for a people without home. At least that's what they say. He shook his head, disappointed. The truth, however, is that they are trying to build a map of the whole sky to find their place again. Idiots, all of them. They could have found another planet, made their home there. Instead, they wander from space station to frontier world to backwater satellite, suddenly searching for something they can't find, and being worse for it. The youth flicked her eyes at the screen again. The humans were left 3 against 11. They had no shot, and even worse, they were down in points. The humans ducked and ran across the platforms, discs flying towards them from 100 different angles. They hid between columns and under cover, but one by one they were hunted down like rabbits flushed out of their holes. The buzzer rang after the last human was hit. The crowd roared with applause and primal screams. Almost every attendee was an historian. A seat at a game like this would cost a king's ransom. The few humans who formed their little enclave among the spectators were probably friends or family of the players and were gifted tickets. The game was already over. The last round didn't even matter. The humans were down in points so much that even if they managed to hit every single historian and not lose a single player, they would still lose by points. As the players of both sides entered the lockers, the historians were celebrating feverishly. Drinks and food were spilled as songs flowed between the stands. The humans should, by custom, refuse to appear for the last round and lose by default. And yet, the little human encampment in between the masses of celebrating historians held tight to their seats. All around them the celebration pushed and swayed them. They seemed a fishing boat lost in the storm, pulled and dragged through currents 100 times bigger than them. But they wouldn't break. They held hands so they wouldn't break apart. They hugged each other so that none of them were left alone. And the wait was done. The historians emerged from their area ready to join the festivities, to drink that beautiful wine of victory, and to be intoxicated in their own accomplishments. But as they stood firm to sing the hymn of their world, the humans emerged from their stares, faces of stone, chests of steel. The celebration ground to a halt. A second of disbelief passed from the crowd to the referees. Why would they keep playing? It could injure players. It would only serve for their opponents to send weaker members that would gain experience. It served no purpose. Arrogant, pathetic, unsportsmanlike. It was plain not fun. The historian players were filled with rage, veins popping out of their bright purple faces. Today they would not send their weaker players. They would send their best and ready for murder. The crowd turned to jeers and booing. The human spectators were throwing rubble and trash, threats of injury, mockery and insults that one would not dare repeat. Yet they also stood like statues of old, unaware of all that passed around them, save for the game in front of them. Even from the bar, a plain distaste was exhibited. The Lucium youth saw how every table had people shaking their heads or chuckling in a mocking way. The same old stupid humans. But she also noted, now every game had stopped, every conversation subdued, and every eye stared at the screen. The round started and the historians went on the offensive. They jumped over barriers and across platforms, devils fresh out of the abyss. The humans tried to coordinate but were broken upon the force of the historian wave. They scattered to the lower platforms, already disadvantaged a couple seconds in. With great confidence, the historian players threw insults and hunted the humans like they never had before. The humans rounded corners and threw discs from odd angles, bouncing off the edges, more luck than skill. They hid where 2 shadows met and surprised their prey. They pretended to run and turned when their pursuers thought them trapped. This was no honest game, this was guerrilla warfare. They used every trap they could think of, luck, wit, trickery and deceit. They played dirty and low. They goaded, climbed, dropped. But it wasn't enough. Their opponents were too good. One by one the humans dropped, but they too inflicted losses on the other side. 3 Astorians stood in front of the last human, a female with scars upon her cheeks. The game was already over, but now every person in attendance stood still, their hearts barely beating. The bar was also silent as a grave, and so was every such place that had a screen, where the eyes could see and the ears hear. Why? What happened here didn't matter, this last round was pure ego. But everyone held a little hope that somehow the impossible would happen, that the little electrons that held the points in the system would do a quantum jump and the humans would win, or that there had been some mistake in counting. Even if they knew that it was over, it didn't seem that way because the humans didn't play like it was. But now, on this last platform, there was no place to hide. The Astorians held the only exit and a dozen more discs. They threw them at the same time, ripping through the air like razors, and every soul could see that it was over. The human didn't have a soul. She jumped almost parallel to the ground and spun in the air, catching a disc with her feet and throwing it with the same motion. She hit an Astorian dead set between the eyes and eliminated them. The last 2 began throwing, lightning from a storm, and the human caught them in the air and threw them back, before the Astorians did the same. A careful dance of deadly wind passed back and forth. No side was hit, no side gained an inch. Every fight that lasts more than 10 seconds is hell. This must have been the deepest layer, their minds exhausted, their arms numb and heavy. One Astorian gave in first, just a misstep, a fraction of a second, and he was gone. 1-on-1, the last human battled against the last Astorian. They circled and dared each other. They breathed furiously to the beat of their discs, and every second seemed to be the last. It ended in a flash. The human had been hit in her chest. The Lucium youth could not believe it. Everyone at the bar was standing, and so was she. When did she stand up in the first place? She heard groaning all around her, and turned to see even the gentleman at her right with his head in his hands, weeping for a race he hadn't even met. The Colosseum held their breaths. No insult or booing met the humans, no more anger. As the last 2 players lay in the ground, laboriously breathing, it was the human who stood up first, hands on her knees. She walked to the Astorian and offered her hand. The other graciously accepted. "Next time," said the human. The Astorian could not help but smile.